You know, in school, most of us learned that the theory of continental drift was this huge, revolutionary idea that popped up in the 20th century. But what if I told you its real origins go back 1,000 years, to scholars in the medieval Islamic world in China? Yeah, today we're going to uncover the forgotten history of one of geology's biggest ideas.
So, this is the central puzzle we're tackling. How could an idea that completely reshaped our view of the planet be described pretty clearly almost 1,000 years before its official discovery in Europe? Let's dive in.
Okay, to really get what was forgotten, we first have to go back to the story we were all told in school. You know the one, the classic tale of a lone genius fighting against the entire scientific establishment.
And the hero of that story is, of course, Alfred Wegener. In 1912, he looked at a world map and saw something obvious to him. The continents looked like they fit together, like giant puzzle pieces. He found matching fossils across oceans and said, hey, these must have been connected once. But the scientific community at the time, they pretty much laughed him out of the room. Their big question was, how? How could massive continents possibly plow through the ocean floor? And Wegener? Well, he didn't have a good answer for that.
But here is where the story we think we know takes a massive twist. It turns out Wegener's radical idea wasn't entirely new, not even close. Its roots, its conceptual foundation, go back almost a full millennium.
I mean, just look at the sheer scale of that gap on the timeline. We are talking about 900 years. 900 years. On one end, you have this Persian polymath Al-Biruni, making these unbelievable geological observations. And way over on the other, you have Alfred Wegener. So what on earth happened in all that time in between?
Let's just break down the core logic here, because it's wild how similar it is. Al-Biruni finds fossils of sea creatures way up high in the mountains and says, well, the only way that's possible is if this land was once at the bottom of the sea. Meanwhile, Wegener finds fossils of the same land animals on continents separated by thousands of miles of ocean and concludes, well, they must have been connected at some point. You see? It's the exact same fundamental insight. The Earth's surface isn't fixed, it changes, and it changes dramatically over huge amounts of time.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It boils down to this. The evidence was there, the brilliant thinking was there, but it was all happening outside the narrow pipeline of scientific history that most of us learn in the West.
And get this, Al-Biruni wasn't even alone. Around the exact same time, over in China, a philosopher named Shen Kuo found fossilized seashells in mountains hundreds of miles from the coast, and he drew the same incredible conclusion. The coastlines themselves must have moved over vast stretches of time. So think about that. You've got these parallel breakthroughs happening in Persia and China centuries before anyone in Europe was even asking these kinds of questions.
So this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the seeds of this world-changing idea were planted so early, why on earth did they just sit there? Why didn't they grow for 900 years?
Well, the answer isn't simple. It seems these early insights ran smack into three major barriers. Three giant walls that stopped them from ever becoming part of mainstream European science.
And these walls were formidable. First, there was a pretty simple language wall. European scholars just weren't reading scientific texts written in Arabic or Chinese. Then you had the bias wall. Even when some of these ideas were translated, they were often brushed aside as, unscientific speculation or philosophy, not real science. But the third wall, the highest and toughest one to climb, that was the paradigm wall.
So, what exactly is a scientific paradigm? Okay, think of it like the operating system for science at any given time. It's the collection of shared beliefs and rules that tell scientists what questions are even worth asking and what kinds of answers are even considered possible.
And for centuries in Europe, the geological operating system was running on biblical literalism. The world was believed to be only a few thousand years old. Any big changes to the landscape were explained by sudden, massive events, like Noah's flood. So an idea like slow, gradual continental drift over millions of years, it didn't just sound wrong, it was literally unthinkable within that framework. It was a file the operating system just couldn't open.
So all of this brings us to a really crucial lesson about how science actually works, how progress really happens. It's not just about one brilliant person having one brilliant idea out of the blue.
Here's a really simple but powerful way to look at it. An idea is like a seed. The brilliant insights of Al-Biruni and Shen Kuo, their seeds basically fell on concrete. The scientific environment was just hostile to them, so they couldn't grow. But by the time Wegener came along, decades of new discoveries in geology and physics had tilled the soil. His seed landed in an intellectual environment that was finally ready for it. It was finally able to take root.
So the real takeaway here is this. Genius is necessary, but it's not enough. A great idea needs a whole ecosystem to survive and grow. It needs a community that's ready to listen, ready to test it, and ready to build on it. Wegener's success wasn't just because his idea was brilliant. It was because the paradigm was finally shifting. The world was, at long last, ready to listen. Progress isn't just about the spark of genius. It's about the world being ready for the fire.
And that leaves us with one final, kind of haunting question to think about. This is just one story from one field of science. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other groundbreaking ideas from all across history and from every corner of the globe are just sitting there in overlooked texts waiting for us to find them? What else have we forgotten to check?